What's up, mi gente? Lennon Lee por aquí. Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Habla Real Estate, el show donde aprendemos cómo hacer dinero invirtiendo en los Estados Unidos y cómo utilizar real estate como vehículo para alcanzar la libertad financiera. Por aquí me encuentro online con dos personas súper sabias en lo que es el tema de real estate. Uno de ellos, por supuesto, my co-host, Arturo Borges. ¿Qué pasó, Arturoski? ¿Cómo estás, brother?
Excelente, Lee, excelente. ¿Tú cómo estás?
Excelente, hermano. Aquí vamos, en la lucha.
Bueno, qué bueno. Complacido de compartir otro episodio contigo, Lee, y con nuestro invitado del día de hoy. En esta oportunidad traemos a Shane Melanson. Shane es el anfitrión de The Investing Advantage Podcast y el fundador de Melanson Real Estate, una firma de desarrollo e inversión en bienes raíces comercial. Con más de 65 millones de dólares en transacciones personales, Shane es el autor de 2 libros y actualmente su misión es ayudar a profesionales y dueños de negocios a hacer inversiones más inteligentes, creando certeza financiera por invertir como los ricos a través de value-add commercial real estate. Shane, it's my pleasure to have you on the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here, man.
I'd love to start off the conversation. I know that you help. I just said that in Spanish. I don't know if you got that. But you help professionals and business owners create financial certainty by investing like the ultra wealthy. So what does that mean exactly, and how do the wealthy invest? And what is it that the regular everyday investor doesn't know about?
Sure. So I guess I've been very fortunate to have like a mentor, my father-in-law, who showed me how to invest in commercial real estate. And his family company has been around for about 96 years. They're publicly traded. They also have a REIT. And so I can tell you, I didn't grow up like that. I mean, both my parents were teachers. I grew up making logging roads in a very small town. And the first couple of investments I ever made, I lost my money. I know my dad, he remortgaged his house, lost $100,000. So I didn't come from the in, or like the in group, if you will, or the wealthy. And for the longest time, I spent really focused on understanding and learning about building wealth. And real estate seemed like kind of the area that most people, that I knew anyways, how they at least held on to their wealth. But investing in residential real estate, while it was a good start for me, wasn't generating like passive revenue. I mean, most of the stuff I was doing was either fixing and flipping, building spec homes. I never did wholesales because for me, if I found a good deal, I wanted to keep it. And I eventually got a job at Sun Life Financial, where I was a commercial lender. And I was on a team where we did around $300 million a year in commercial loans. And I started to see how really like pension funds, publicly traded companies, REITs, how they all did business. But then there would be the odd individual that would come in, and I'm thinking, like, how does this guy have $5 million or $10 million to do this big deal? And I realized that's kind of when I learned about syndications, although there was still a big gap. Like I was still, I had my real estate license, I had my mortgage license, I was, fixing and flipping. I was working a lot, but I wasn't doing, syndications until I met my wife, and then her father kind of brought me in after a couple of years of kind of seeing me, kill myself in residential, and said, if you want to learn this, let's go on a trip down to Texas and California. So I don't know, we can dive in anywhere you guys want, but
yeah, definitely. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, a lot of people that are investors already in real estate, or even for those that are not in real estate yet, they get a lot of limiting beliefs, and then especially, of course, if they want to make a jump into commercial real estate and try to, invest in bigger deals. What are some of those challenges that you think people put on themselves, or not even on themselves, but like real challenges that they find when they try to transition into commercial real estate?
Well, I think some of the biggest lessons I learned was just how much of a small knit group of commercial real estate investors there are. And it's a very, these are just my perspectives, right? So it doesn't mean they're right. But I've worked in this business for a long time. And I can tell you, whenever I go into a new city, I know that there's like a few key relationships that I need to make. And so if I can make those relationships, and I've got, call them a shepherd or someone that's going to help me to make sure that I don't make, like I don't want to be dumb money ever going into a new market or even in my own market. Now, I would say that someone new to commercial real estate, they're used to looking on MLS. They're used to having residential realtors kind of bend over backwards and show them deals. They're not used to a commercial guy saying, pre-qualifying them. Like, what do you own? What have you done lately? Show me a proof of funds. They're basically making sure that they're not going to waste time. And I think that throws a lot of real estate investors off, and they kind of pull back, like, wow, I didn't expect that. And then they send them a deal, and it's a crap deal that no one wants because they're testing them, and they don't realize that this is the game. Like, I call it the game of commercial real estate. And if you're a player, you understand the game. But if you're new to it and you're not familiar, you don't have someone that can kind of show you the game. I think it would be probably similar to if I went to Wall Street, I would get crushed. I don't know the game, right? But if some guy took me under his wing for 6 months to a year, introduced me to the players, showed me what was going on, said, here's how you make money, here's how you lose money, all of a sudden I get behind the curtains, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make a lot of sense. So how would that journey look like then? Someone, let's say someone that's owns a couple properties on the residential side, and by the way, what you just said, it's just spot on, because a lot of the challenge that even I myself felt moving from residential to commercial was actually just that, right? Like we typically think that if you have the money, then you can just look for properties, talk to the broker, and that they actually, they will ask for your money, and that's not the case. Like, money it's important, but the most important component on that side really that I've seen is the credibility. Okay, who you are you going to be able to perform and close on the deal? Don't make me waste my time and all that good stuff. All right. So anyway, that said, how does that journey look like then? Someone that wants to transition, what would you think the first step would be, and then go from there?
But even before that, Shane, what in your opinion, why is commercial real estate superior in some way or in any way than residential? I mean, why would someone make that transition, and how would that look like?
Sure. So I'll answer your question first. I will say I don't think commercial real estate is for everyone. I don't think that you can paint a brush with everybody should do X, Y, and Z. I think commercial real estate is good for people that have maybe a high income, that are busy. They don't want a second job. And so if, for example, when I worked with my physician, Dan, not that long ago, I mean, he owned some residential properties. He invested in them. He was hoping for it to replace his, call it $300,000 a year job. And when he did the math, it was like he's going to need 100 or 150 homes to do that. So feasibly, he's just looking at this saying, like, I don't want a second job, Shane. I want one property, two properties that are going to eventually give me enough passive income that I can choose to leave my profession as a physician. Number one. Number two, I want to put my kids through school. So for him, he was patient. I just wrote an article on this on LinkedIn where I had a gentleman contact me. He's used to flipping condos. He's making a ton of money. And so he's asking me to show him how to make like $1 million in 6 months on a commercial property with very little risk. And I just said, well, like, that's not me. Like, I'm not a magician. Like, I invest with a very kind of specific game plan. And so if you have that perspective of kind of quick money, like obviously you can make fast money, but it's not a business model. I don't think. It just so happens that sometimes people hit it out of the park and then everyone focuses on it. So does that answer your question?
Right. It's not sustainable.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, and I can't remember what was the second question.
Well, what would that transition look like? Okay, if you understand, let's say you understand, okay, I want to achieve financial freedom, because I think that's at the core of what we do here, and what people really want to achieve. And it looks a little bit different for everyone, but ultimately that's what we want to have, right? Like that freedom, and then have real estate as the vehicle to take us there. So yes, that's the goal. And we also understand, okay, it's a long-term play. It's not like I want to get rich in a year and then, go sit on a beach. But with that understanding, then, okay, how do you see it? How do you approach it? And how do you think people should approach it too? And obviously it's a case by case basis, not for everyone, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the like, I'll kind of give you like maybe the first 2 or 3 steps. So number one, I always try to get like extreme clarity, and I call it like, what's your plan? What's your investing blueprint? And then based on whatever that map looks like, right? So if I've got someone that is younger, that has maybe more disposable income, is prepared to take a little more risk, then they may be right to do a value add. And then maybe someone else that's a little bit later and is looking for more wealth preservation and to, generational wealth, they may just look for core assets. But I think really what you're asking is like, how do you go from res to commercial? And that is, in my opinion, because it is relationships, I always suggest to people to find someone that can plug you into a market. So how would that look? Well, let's say you guys wanted to come up to Calgary. Well, now you know me. And so one of the wonderful things about these podcasts is you're able to build relationships. And likewise, if I want to go to Miami, now I can go and talk to you guys, and you guys will say, okay, here's the commercial lawyer that I use. Here's the brokers that I like that can show me deals. And one call from you to that broker, all of a sudden they're going to say, okay, Shane's for real. I'll give him 5 minutes, right? But if I cold call that guy and I have no status with him, it's a long road. It can happen. I mean, when we went into Houston, so this was 2009. So you have to remember, 2009, there wasn't a lot of buyers. And so there wasn't a lot of A-class properties that were transacting. And so when I reached out to this lady at Colliers, cold in from Calgary, on LinkedIn, she took my call because she still had to show up, and it was kind of like on the outside chance that this guy closes, I'll take his call. So market cycles will dictate a little bit. I mean, when you're in a frothy market, the brokers have their list of 10 guys that they're dealing with, or girls, or whoever it happens to be. But when the market softens, like I think is happening maybe right now, I think right now is a good opportunity because brokers still want to move product, right? They still got to make money. And if their phone stops ringing and the sellers are saying, hey, what's going on? And you reach out on LinkedIn in a professional fashion, then I think that's a great way to start. I mean, there's lots of strategies. Like one of them is like the programmatic investor that I call, which is really kind of having your elevator pitch when you reach out to someone, so you don't sound like a flake. You actually sound like a person that has been in the business and understands and respects their time.
Right. Yeah. So basically learning the lingo, getting into the game, understanding exactly what you want to do, what your goals are, and of course, putting yourself at the same level than this guy. If you're going to talk to an attorney, to any of those service providers, because at the end of the day, they're vendors, right, for you. But they're going to be part of your team, so the relationship needs to go beyond that, and obviously they need to respect and understand, that you're serious about it, and that you're, that you know what you're doing at the end of the day, because that no one really wants to be around someone that's just, shooting for the fences, but without any real structure or strategy behind it, I guess.
Shane, I know that you talk about there being two main types of investors for you. The strategic ones, and the ones to chase? What are the difference between the two?
So a strategic investor is someone that has what I call like an investing philosophy, a blueprint. Like they are focused. And the reason I can talk about both investors, the one that chases, which is, a deal shows up in your inbox and you're like, okay, well, let's go look at it. Let's make an offer. Let's do this. There's a story here. Well, I used to be the guy that chased, and that's why I have experience in mobile homes, light industrial, retail, multi. I've done mortgages. Actually, there was a group out of Miami, or I don't know for sure if it was Miami, but certainly out of Florida, that had a bunch of loans in Canada, and we purchased them. So I've got this big, broad background, and it's because I was focused on the deal, not having kind of a cohesive investment strategy, and that's cost me. But obviously, I can't go back in time, so now I just try to share what I would have done differently. And I think having a real focus, you become an expert, and it just gives you, it just allows you to look at a deal in 2 minutes versus 2 hours, and you can tell whether. I mean, I'm sure you guys, when you look at a deal, you're like, I know this neighborhood, I know the rents, I know this is a C neighborhood or a B neighborhood, and I know that rent should be $1,450 for a 2, $1,200 for a 1. Parking's going to be an issue, but it's close to this, and this light transit's coming. Like, you just have all that intel versus, geez, I don't know, like, let's go drive it. Let's go look at it. Let's do, all the work necessary to determine whether or not the deal makes sense.
Right. So I think this goes pretty much in line with, and I don't know exactly if this is something that you mentioned in your book called Club Syndication, or it's just a concept that you work with, but it's called geographic specialist, right? Like, do you want to be the importance of being a geographic specialist? What does that mean exactly, and why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, so the geographic specialist is kind of, it falls underneath what I call the programmatic investor, and that is when you really understand your market. So it could be like in Houston, for example, right? Like, I mean, if you know the Galleria, like every owner, the rents, the streets, where the new development is going in, and you just have a real sensitivity to what's going on, you're going to have a huge advantage over someone that is either all over Houston or maybe just doing Texas. So now it has, like there's always trade-offs, right? So if you just focus on one specific area, and that area maybe isn't the best area, then that can be a detriment. So it really does come down to your research. But geographically, it just really means focusing on, and for most new investors, I think this is one of the questions you guys had asked earlier. I would suggest starting as close to home as possible, because it is relationship driven, and because you're going to have what I call local intel or information that investors outside of your city might not have. And there's so many examples I could give you, but that is how I think about it.
I love it. And Shane, I know you worked with Navy SEALs. Tell us a little bit more about that story, and how did that work with the SEALs has helped you with your mindset, your emotional intelligence, and your ability to handle stress and risk of large commercial real estate developments, which I believe is what you're doing now. You're focused.
Yeah, that's funny. So I trained with Mark Devine, who is a Navy SEAL out of Coronado in San Diego. And, first I was part of the Unbeatable Mind, and then I went through some of the SEAL Fit training. And for the first 2 years, it was mainly just mindset. And I would do the workouts, and then I wanted to kind of test myself. So I went down and I did a 20X challenge, which was like a 14-hour crucible. And I set like the intention or the goal, not just to finish it, but I wanted to like have a smile on my face, because my real goal was to do Kokoro, which is a 50-hour kind of to mimic Hell Week. And there was an experience there that really opened my eyes, and I didn't. So I went in thinking it's about Shane. Shane's got to get through it, right? And that is I didn't have any other kind of paradigm. I don't have any military training. So I just, and when I got there, they told us, okay, when you're thirsty, make sure you guys drink water, and because it's going to be hot today. So we were on the beach. We were out for about 4 or 5 hours, and we were, really working hard, and we were getting prepped on the next evolution. So I took my backpack off and I started to take a drink of my water because I was really thirsty. I mean, coming from Calgary, I was like, this was like crazy hot for me. Whereas most guys that were from San Diego, it was just kind of an average day. And the coaches were like, "Oh, Shane, why don't you take a knee and, you get comfortable there." And they sent, I think it was 12 of us or 15, whatever the number was. And they sent everybody into the water and back. And they call it sugar cookies, where you got to roll around the sand, get sandy, run back out to the surf, come back. And they made me watch my whole team do this for, 10 minutes. And I tell you, you just feel like a bag of, like, I won't swear, but you feel horrible. And at that moment, I realized this was all about team. This is not about Shane anymore. And from that moment on, there was a couple of guys that were a little bit less, not as in as good a shape. And I would carry their bag, or I'd help them. I'd stay back. And it really reframed. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I kind of get goosebumps because it was just such a powerful moment. And these guys, they are not there to be your buddy. They're there to show you lessons. And those lessons, sometimes you got to learn the hard way, which, sometimes that they're the ones that stick with you.
Yeah. And is there a scenario, like a specific case in or a deal or something in real estate where you go back and think, well, yeah, that's exactly basically you applied the lessons learned during those times?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, so a good one is, I'll give you one example. We had a deal in Ontario. It was about 1,150 acres where we're doing a mobile home. We call it a seasonal land lease community. And the deal was not going as we thought. We thought we were going to get some takeout financing, but the financials weren't strong enough. And so what ended up happening was we had to cash call our investors. So that's not fun, but I'm the one responsible. So I did it. And what ended up happening was the deal took longer than we thought. And one of the partners that was kind of sweat equity like myself, he just basically said, "Shane, I got to put food on the table and I got to take care of my family." And he essentially joined our competition. And so I understood why he did it. So I never was upset, but I didn't have that choice because I had raised, at that time, it was close to $8 million. And failure was not an option. And I needed to stick it out. So I've got to provide for my family, but I also have to make this deal happen. So sell my house, sell my BMW, move out there, make it work, come back, it was 3 years of working my ass off. But my investors, we took a deal from 8.5 million, sold it for 17. And now my investors, I can send them a text message and raise money now because they know that I've got their back. So does that kind of answer your question?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that's a wonderful story.
I love it. Hey, Shane, not to get a little bit more practical, being a strategic investor yourself, like you said, what are some of the rules, the investing principles you follow nowadays to invest successfully that someone looking to start out or even someone experienced could apply for themselves?
There's a couple of rules that kind of come to mind that I try to subscribe to, and that is, number one, I'm generally looking to buy below replacement cost. I'm generally trying to buy on, and I say generally because you can always break a rule. And so I don't want to make this sound like it's hard and fast, but these are principles and real strong guidelines that I kind of instill for myself. If you're a new investor, I would probably make them non-negotiables, but as you get more seasoned, then you can kind of veer a little farther away from what I call the safe line of investing. So some of those principles, like I said, so buying on cash flow, buying below replacement value, investing in assets that I understand.
For those, sorry to interrupt you, Shane, for those that don't know what buying below replacement cost is, what does that mean?
Yeah, so when you, so let's just take it could be a multifamily building, right? So here in Calgary right now, if I can build a brand new multifamily for 200 a door, and I pay 210 a door for a building, that is above replacement cost. So what's my land? What's my construction cost going to be? And then based on those two variables, am I buying above or below? And so for the past, 4 years, I can build some product, retail in certain locations, multifamily in certain locations. I can buy the land, upzone it, and build for cheaper than what I can buy existing properties for. So for me, I'll take the development risk because I know how to execute and I've got a good team. And I'm essentially building below what the replacement is. And so, I'm sure you're even seeing this in the US, right? With some of the big syndicators, when they're bidding on properties, they're paying, 4 caps. And if they're paying 160 a door and you can replace it for 140, that to me can be risky. Not always, because sometimes it's location that you can't replace, but that's a nuance.
Yeah, no, definitely location. It's obviously, it's kind of the obvious one, but what it's not so obvious for a lot of people is what you just mentioned, and it's the development risk. You need to be able to, basically have a team of people around you and have the experience and the track record doing it, especially if you're going to raise capital for it, right? Because a sophisticated investor is going to ask you, okay, well, yeah, cool. You can buy for, you can build it for cheaper than you're going to actually buy it out there, but how are you going to execute it? What's the team? Have you done it before? And all that good stuff, because of course they're not, they don't want to put their money with someone that doesn't have the experience, right? So that really takes me to the question of, okay, and I'm thinking specifically about the example that you had about this guy that I think you mentioned. It was a physician that he wanted to replace his income and all that, but how do you get from to 150 houses? That's going to be a hassle to manage, even if you have a property management company. So it's a job, basically an asset management job that you're taking. So if you don't want to have that, then okay, you go and you want to buy an apartment complex, or you want to buy like a industrial complex or whatever it is. Where do you get the money from, right? Like if you don't have the whole equity that's needed. So you talk about, well, your book is called Club Syndication, right? So why don't you tell us about what syndication is, and why do you think it's a good avenue for someone like that to be able to scale and use other people's money?
Sure. So just for I don't want to misguide or mislead, but the physician had the money to be able to do his first deal. But you're right, not everybody has $1 million or $500,000 or whatever the number is to be able to do it. The way I do my deals, I syndicate, right? And so what I mean by club syndication is it's really kind of a tight-knit group of high net worth investors that come into my deals. And why I call it a club is because they all know me, and they know me very well. And so this isn't like the first time they've heard of me. And the only way people are coming into my deals now, I'll make a preface to this, but the only way people used to be able to come into my deals was they had to be kind of referred in, right? So that way it was like, okay, this guy's been in my deal, or this lady's been in my deal for 10 years. She wants her brother to come in. We have a conversation. We go have lunch, a coffee, whatever it happens to be. So that was kind of the old way of doing syndications. And I would say just in the past 12 months, why I wrote my book, why I've got a podcast, beyond just educating people, is to potentially broaden that a little bit. And so, for example, like I'm sure why you guys have a podcast, like by the time an investor comes to me today, and I would say 9 times out of 10, they've read my book and they've listened to 50 or 60 episodes or 10 episodes, whatever it happens to be. They know my investing philosophy. They know what I believe in. And then they can make a decision. Okay, I like what Shane says, or I don't like it. Either way, I eliminate the people that don't want to invest with me, and I don't have to spend 3 months of wasting my time and their time to determine that. Or worse, they get into a deal and they're just like, well, hold on a second. I didn't expect this, this, and this. Well, it's like commercial real estate, there's risk and it takes time. And that's why I only want patient people, because I know how hard I'm going to work. And I don't have a full-time IR or investor relations person to manage someone. So people that come into my deals, they know I'm going to give them quarterly updates. They're going to get a check in the mail, all that kind of stuff. But my primary focus is I keep my overhead low, and my value add is executing on the deal. It's not, constantly having to have conversations with investors about questions is, hey, what about that? What about this? And I love having them. I just don't have the time to be able to do it, I guess.
Yeah. And that only tells you one thing. If you're having to have, if not having to have, right? But if you have investors, or you're always going to have one or two, but if you have too many investors that want to talk to you every day and ask you questions every day, maybe, just maybe, you haven't done your job at solidifying and building that relationship to begin with, and building that trust to begin with, right?
Yeah, totally.
But
and setting expectations as well.
Yes,
exactly.
Expectations is huge. It's huge, and that's why I try to talk guys out of investing in some of my deals, because I'd rather say it up front and under promise. I know that there's people that talk about over promising and then trying to over deliver. I get that, and I think that makes sense to some degree. However, I like to come in fairly conservative, because I don't know, I've just had too many market cycles where things come off, and you just have to work extra hard to make a deal happen. And it will come around, but you just want to have that patience.
Cool, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So just to start closing the show, again, like we always say this on every episode, but it's the truth. We can stay here and talk for a couple more hours, no problem, and go deeper into all this, how to raise capital, how to identify deals, how to become a specialist in a specific area, and all that. I guess you can buy Shane's book if you want to go deeper on his thought process. So what's one thing, Shane, that you think someone that's looking to make that transition into commercial real estate that they can do right now today? Very practical advice that you would give them to I guess make them more successful, or put them in an advantage in their game, I guess.
So one thing, to me, it would be, so I'll give you maybe two things, but one of them would be to first start to figure out who are the players in your market. So go on LinkedIn, type in commercial real estate Calgary, commercial real estate Miami, commercial real estate broker, agent, and then specifically investment sales, whoever it happens to be. And just start following them. Follow what it is that they're putting out, and start to internalize what's going on in the market, what's the conversation. But then probably the next thing I would do is I would familiarize myself with the terminology, because I can tell you every once in a while I have a conversation with someone that I can tell is maybe new to commercial real estate, but they're trying to act smart, and they'll use lingo that doesn't make sense. Like when you're using NOI and gross rent and interchangeably, like, that there's something wrong, because you're not, especially if it's gross rents versus triple net, like you're not going to get the same number. And so that right away tells me if that fundamental difference isn't clear in the person's mind, then everything else falls apart. So I would say just having 40 or 50, you can go to Investopedia and just look at commercial real estate terms, right? NOI, DCR, cap rate, just IRR. Some of the things that we toss around, I think would really be helpful. Because if you don't know the language, like when you guys first started, you guys were speaking Spanish. I didn't know that language, right? So it's very difficult if you come into commercial real estate, you don't speak the language. you're going to be confused.
Yep, 100%. I think that's a great analogy right there. One thing, Shane, that you hear, or one piece of advice that you hear given out a lot in the industry, but that you don't necessarily agree with, what would that be? There might be a few, but
yeah, I know that's why I'm trying to narrow it down a little bit. But I guess even though my book is on raising capital, I'm hypersensitive for new investors that don't have experience going out and raising equity and capital, if you will. And the reason for that is, I mean, like I said, I've lost a lot of money from investing with the wrong person. And so I'm just very sensitive to the fact that if someone has not taken the time to educate themselves, to find a mentor, I mean, I still have mentors to this day, right? I mean, I'm constantly investing. And the other thing I would say is, here's one thing. Okay, I see too many people leaving their jobs too early, jumping into syndications because they think that they're going to, just because they got a $10 million deal, they raised $3 million, that they can replace $100,000 or $150,000 of income. And what they probably find out very quickly is, yeah, you got a syndication fee, but your asset management fee, and unless there's like a huge pop in value, you're not replacing that $150K unless you're juicing that deal. And the way I structure my deals, I know how much it takes in order to make that kind of money. And I think that too many people jump in too soon without appreciating that it's long term. You create wealth for the long term. So
I love that one. I don't think that one, I hear that often. But to finish up the episode, Shane, let's do sort of a fire round. I'm going to say a few words, and you have to tell me the first word or short phrase that comes to mind, okay? So let's go. Money.
Freedom.
Financial freedom.
Time.
Cash flow.
Real estate.
Real estate?
Yep.
But real estate now.
Oh, real estate. Real estate. Building.
Crisis.
I think of opportunity.
Family.
My 3 kids and my wife.
And the last one, success.
Being able to live life on my terms.
Excellent. Shane, thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your story and knowledge with our audience. We really appreciate it. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos están escuchando por acompañarnos igualmente. Asegúrense de compartirlo, de darle like, comentar y seguirnos en todas nuestras redes sociales a Se Habla Real Estate y Se Habla RE en Twitter. Nuestra página web sehablarealestate.co. Y para cualquier información nos pueden escribir a info@sehablarealestate.co. Shane, if someone wants to learn a little bit more about what you're doing or get in touch with you, how can they do it?
The best place is just to go to my website, Shane Melanson, Melanson. So ShaneMelanson.com. All the links to, my book and everything are there. So that's the easiest.
Sounds great. Lee?
Excellent. Bueno, mi gente, muchísimas gracias. Thank you, Shane. We appreciate it, man. It's been a wonderful conversation. Hope to have you back on the podcast sometime soon.
Wonderful. I appreciate it, gentlemen.
Gracias a todos.